Today we're talking about book number 53. Oh yeah, I don't have the cover because it's a double book with the beginning and it's just the cover of the beginning. So imagine the cover of book 53. The answer in my hand coming towards you. Applegate is back. Catherine is doing the last two books, so we're done with the ghostwriters now. And we're essentially at the end game. This is it. This is what amounts to essentially the end of the Animorphs series, and what a journey it has been. It's had its fair share of ups and downs. Will we get many ups and downs as we hit the end of the series? Firstly, let's cover what I usually do recently, which is the grammar and all that sort of stuff. Basically how well the book is written from a literary point of view. Pretty good. A few bits where, for example, somebody's thought speaking when they should not be thought speaking. And it's just a couple of mistakes. It's stuff that you can just sort of say, yeah, okay, that was done a bit wrong, but whatever. It's largely fine. It's largely fine. And the characters, being that they are being written now by the original author, are all pretty much on point. We start off the book with the Animorphs flying over the vast destruction that is their hometown. Basically, the majority of the town has caved in to this big, blown-up YEERK pool. And suddenly, the pool ship, the YEERK's big mothership, comes down and settles in the area. What's happening is because the YEERK pool is gone, and there are all these YEERKs around, the pool ship has come down to be sort of a temporary YEERK pool on the planet's surface. That's why it's there. And it turns out that there's a new pool being built way over yonder. They see like a load of smoke. Tobias is sent to investigate at some point in the book. It turns out there's a new pool being built by loads and loads of Taxxons. Okay, so that is setting the scene of what is happening here. Jake, by the way, is the narrator for this one. This is the final Jake book. This is what amounts to the culmination of everything that's happened to him. In my opinion, he has had by far and away the most character development, the most stuff happening to him. A lot, even other characters' character arcs are largely to do with him. So this is a very important book for him. And spoiler alert, I think it largely plays quite well for Jake. I wouldn't say it's a perfect rounding off of his character arc, but I can see where it's gone, why it's gone there, and I'm relatively happy with it. So, Jake at this point says the pool ship is there. We know pretty much, or it's been implied here and there, that this is the last big YEERK stronghold, because they've come back from the Anati planet elsewhere, and the Andalites are coming in closer. So Jake thinks if we take out this pool ship, then we've essentially won. They've essentially won, so there's the target. That's the big abort button. Remember book 41? That is his abort button there. Okay? And Jake immediately says, right, we're going to do something about this. So he gathers everyone in the Hork-Bajir land, his council of war. What happens in this conversation is they decide we've got to do something about this pool ship. And there is the thought of, let's blow it up. Now, remember in the last book when they talked about the YEERK pool, it was Toby that suggested essentially blowing up the YEERK pool. That suggestion is now floated to the group, and suddenly Toby turns around and says, actually, let's not do that. She starts talking about the massive amount of Hork-Bajir on that ship and suddenly diverts it to, we could take control of it, we can control its weapons. And it's funny, really, why she's suddenly doing this back and forth. Is it because we haven't nailed down her character? Let's face it, she hasn't been a very big character in the series, whereas perhaps she probably should have been. I think she would have been a very useful character to inject more into this series. So from last time where she suggests blowing up the YEERK pool, she's now saying the pool ship, we probably shouldn't blow that up. I want to rescue the Hork-Bajir on there. Is that a numbers thing? Does she think that the YEERK pool didn't have that many Hork-Bajir, but the pool ship will contain more and what have you? Possibly, because if it is the last big YEERK stronghold, then the majority of the Hork-Bajir hosts are now there. So that's Toby probably thinking, okay, blew up the YEERK pool ship, the YEERK pool, Not a big deal from a numbers point of view, but if we blow up the pool ship, then we seriously deplete our own numbers. So she's probably thinking of it from that perspective, which is why I think we got the change of opinion from her. But they warm to this idea that they take control of the pool ship. Again, funny how Toby's ideas come up and they will just suddenly say, yeah, that's a good idea. But Jake says, okay, what we want to do is take this pool ship. How are we going to do it? We've got to get onto the pool ship somehow. And we know that the defences are intense. This is the biggest defensive unit probably the YEERKs have put out there. So he says, we need a diversion and we need everybody. So he sets Marco on a task to find the Chee and to find who the top ranking military official is in the area. One of the things that did happen recently, just before, from the first chapter, a bunch of F-16s, I believe, came in and tried to fight off the bug fighters, but it was pretty useless. We know that the military is around somewhere planning things. So Jake says, go find out who is in charge here. And he finds out, and the Animorphs then go to Alien Task Force 1 base, which is somewhere in the mountains, this like bunker sort of thing that they've set up, the military. They've sort of propped it up. And they find out who the general is, and it's General Doubleday. General Doubleday. And so Jake decides to go in there. He's morphed Dragonfly, and he goes and finds the general by zooming through and listening to people speak, and lands on the desk of General Doubleday, who's got some of his officers around him. And instead of... This happened a couple of books ago, didn't it? I think it was The Absolute, where the Animorph in question just starts demorphing in the middle of everyone and doesn't say a thing. And I thought, God damn it, Jake, just fucking announce yourself. Why are you putting... Someone could easily go, slap, dead. No, if you like hide under the desk so you're not seen and then start talking. Hey, General Doubleday, I'm Jake. I'm an Animorph. I'm fighting off this alien threat. I'm currently in Dragonfly morph. I am going to demorph on your desk. Please do not slap me with a spoon. And it probably would have gone much smoother, but he decides to just appear, despite the fact that these could be controllers. It's doubtful that the general is, because he probably wouldn't put a task force there, but then again, maybe a YEERKed general would do that to play the game, essentially. Or even to provide external defence for the pool ship by hunkering down there and playing those sorts of games. But whatever. That's what the plot wanted to do, and that is what the plot will do. So he demorphs in this room. He says, Oi, General, I've got a fucking proposition for you, mate. And the General says, arrest him. And they handcuff him, put him on the floor, and drag him into a little prison block. Sorry, I'm just going to adjust the camera. So he gets put in jail. And, not jail, he's put in a bloody box, I don't know. And I understand now why they made this decision to, let's not announce him. And it actually does provide a pretty funny moment where he morphs, goes back to the general, and gets thrown back in again, and this happens 4 times. It was quite an amusing little moment. Had to sacrifice a bit of realism and logic to do it, but I can forgive it because it made me chuckle. But eventually, he comes up to the general and says, right, this has gone on too long now. Sit down, shut up, I'm going to tell you what's what. And the general starts to listen. Turns out some of the officers in this room are controllers. And why they didn't slap this dragonfly earlier and just say, sir, dealt with that problem for you, I don't know. Once again, logic is sacrificed for this particular part. But they all start putting their guns at each other. But they eventually get out of this problem. And then the YEERKs start coming in. Probably because one of these controllers in this room saw Jake demorphing. Thought, I'm just going to make a quick call, guys. Again, Jake, why didn't you just announce yourself there and then and say to the general, anyone who goes and leaves to make a phone call is probably one of them. You might solve that problem. But hey-ho, who cares if all these people's lives are put in danger, eh, Jake? Christ's sake. I can't even throw it on the floor because the cover's not on here. It would be like throwing the beginning on the floor. Not that I won't. If the answer was here, I'd look at it sternly, but I wouldn't throw it on the floor. Just leave it at that. So all these Hawk-Bajir come in, and these human controllers with their rifles, and a big fight breaks out. Of course, this fight is part of the reason why General Doubleday is convinced that shit is going down and that he has to do something about it. So lots of people have died here from the military side, some of the Hawk-Bajir as well. But the Animorphs escape with their lives and leave. Before he does that, he basically tells General Doubleday, you need to hunker down somewhere for 3 days because that's how long it would take for the Yeerks to starve. Once those Yeerks have either left, been killed, or have starved, you have your Yeerk-free troops, and then you can mobilise them without fear of betrayal, or what amounts to betrayal. So that's what General Doubleday has been told to do at this point, and he does so. So the Animorphs now have another plan, another deadly mission, and they've got to go to this new Yeerk pool being built by the Taxxons. And this is one of those moments where Cassie's feelings are, once again, just put aside. But at this point, she's given up. She's almost given up, because the order is, what do we do about these Taxxons? We've got to kill them. We've got to kill all these Taxxons in this area. We've got to cause as much damage as possible to stop this new Yeerk pool being built. That is the order, and they go through with it. Jake realises that Cassie would object, but at this point, even she knows, yeah, I can't, this is going to happen regardless of what I say. And we've covered this goes back to book 44, where she thinks to herself, okay, I've got to do something bad, but it's going to happen regardless of whether I do it or not. And if it helps for some greater good, then I might as well get involved in it. So yeah, book 44, I've mentioned it a few times recently. It's quite an important book, looking back at that one. So they go into this Taxxon area, and they've got some of Toby's Hawk-Bajir there. They've got the auxiliary animals. They're doing essentially a three-pronged attack. So they go in and start battering these Taxxons. And just as the Yeerks start to realise what's going on and converge on these groups, they bail. But just before they can all bail, Jake falls through into this cavern. Falls down, bang! And he's faced with Taxxons. A big cave of Taxxons. But not just any Taxxons. These are Yeerk-free Taxxons. Now, all along, we've known that Taxxons sometimes are Yeerked, sometimes are not. The ones that aren't are just doing like little labour jobs, because there's no point in putting a Yeerk in them if they don't need them. The Taxxons will eat things like caverns, for example. So the Taxxons that make Yeerk pools and caverns and tunnels, from what I gather, don't tend to have Yeerks in them, because what's the point? They'll just do it anyway without Yeerks. It turns out that when Jake is in this cavern, feeling completely outnumbered, one Taxxon comes up to him. We know this Taxxon. His name is Arbron. Remember him from the Andalite Chronicles. As much as I didn't really like that book, I'm not going to say that this isn't canon. It's obviously, Arbron is an established character. And he comes up and he starts thought speaking. Jake's like, what the fuck's going on here? He says, I'm Arbron. I was a friend of Elfangor. I worked with Alran, who you now know as Vissel 1. And we have a proposition for you. We don't like the Yeerks anymore. Because what's happened here is, obviously, Cassie allowed Tom to escape with the morphing cube. So the Yeerks now have the morphing cube, which I've neglected to turn on. There it is. Thank God I reminded myself. You're on now. If you haven't guessed already, I'm hungover. So that's why all these little problems are seeping in, because I'm just like, sort of half dead at the moment. Silly me. Silly me. So the Yeerks have the morphing cube. And these non-Yeerked Taxxons, who basically hate their own lives, they're just like, I'm this eternally hungry worm thing, and I can't help but be an eternally hungry, voracious worm thing. So Arbron, who seems to have brought himself to be in charge of these non-Yeerked Taxxons, Why he was never YEERKed and they maybe got rid of him or something, I don't know. Perhaps just a luck thing, or he somehow managed to evade it all. Quite possible. They see that the YEERKs have got the morphing cube, but they're clearly not going to plan to give the morphing power to the Taxxons. So these Taxxons have now thought, okay, so we've now established that even if the YEERKs win all these wars and they take over, we're still just going to be these just things that nobody cares about, and we're just eternally in misery. So they think, hold on, even if our allies win, we're fucked. So is there a better option? Perhaps if we ally with the other side, with the Andalites, maybe we'll have a better chance of getting the morphing cube and getting ourselves out of this misery. So they have that proposition for Jake. Whether it's truthful, that's a speculation, as we will find out later on. But he says to Jake, meet me back here later on and we shall discuss things further. We want to have a new morph. Please show us. Please come back and show us what we can have. So Jake goes back to the camp where they all presumed he was dead. But of course he's not. And he gets, this is a funny bit, he gets reported to, I forget who by specifically, I think it was Marco. But he says, Toby lost 3 of her people. James lost 1 of his people. And Jake says, oh, how's James doing? I hope he's all right. How's James? And I just thought, hold on a minute. That just seems a bit dickish, doesn't it? Toby's lost 3 people. James has lost 1. And you don't, how's James doing? I hope he's all right. Who, I don't fucking care. How's James? It just felt a bit, you know, if I was in a situation, right, say like if I went to my family up north or something, and somebody came up to me and said, oh, your cousin twice removed has just died. And these 3 cousins over here, 4 times removed, have also died. And I've got relatives of these 2 here. And I say, oh, I hope you're all right. Sorry, who are you? I feel really bad for you. I mean, in a way, I sort of get it, because this Ray character who died was just a kid who'd recently got involved in the war, and the auxiliary Animorphs are also very new to the war, whereas Toby and her people are very much ingrained into it, so they probably know how to handle it better than the auxiliary Animorphs. But still, you at least say, oh, is Toby all right as well? Is she all right? Are they... Yeah? Might have a word with her later, but I'm just going to talk to the... Not a bit of it. Fuck you, Horbage. How's the auxiliaries today? Jake, behave yourself, boy. So the Animorphs come to a plan regarding the Taxxons. Sorry, I'm getting a sore throat here. I think it's a consequence of the hangover. I might not be able to shout and scream as much as usual. Dizzy. Right, where the fuck was I? Shut up, Alexa. Don't know why she's bloody kicking off. Jesus. I'm being spied on by Zuckerberg or whoever. Fuck you, Zuckerberg, if you're listening. This is my review. Tosser. The Animorphs come up with a plan to find a morph that they think would at least somewhat appeal to the Taxxons. And they choose an anaconda. They say, we want something similar to the Taxxons, but without the hunger. Okay, I don't understand how a snake is similar to an alien centipede. Maybe because they're quite long in their body. Apart from that, there's not really much in terms of similarity. But I think it was mostly because snakes don't eat very often. They can go for months without eating. So they probably thought, they'd probably appreciate that ability to just sit around and not eat for a long time. So they choose an anaconda. And Jake and Cassie have a bit of a moment in the anaconda exhibit. So Jake's acquired the anaconda. And then they have this chat. Now, all along I've been saying that Jake sort of doesn't trust Cassie anymore and manipulated her in the last book. This book sort of makes me think twice about that idea of he doesn't care for her at all. He still obviously cares for her, but I think there's such a clear divide now that it's almost a nostalgia thing for Jake at this point, looking back at what he knows he's lost. And then Cassie at one point in this book says, after this is all done, assuming we survive, what can we do? And he says, we can still be together. And she's like, no. At least a year apart, just to see how things go. Because Jake, I don't think you're going to be very healthy after all this goes down. And Jake's just fucking all right then. All right, fuck off, bitch. Demon Cassie. But yeah, I think a large part of Jake's turn back towards loving Cassie is definitely more of a nostalgia. He knows that the end is coming, and he's trying to grapple at what he thinks he might be able to salvage from this mess. But Cassie, yeah, turns around and basically says, in effect, no. She's basically said, yeah, I'll call you. Yeah, I'll call you. That sort of thing. Poor Jake. Jake goes to this meeting place, and he jumps into this vehicle that he's been told about by Arbron. And by the way, this is in like a deserted car park in the middle of a blown up town. So there's not many people around, funnily enough. And the car park falls in, and he slides down under there. He's got the other Animorphs with him in secret. He was told to meet Arbron alone, but of course he's not going to do that. So he ends up in this cavern and confronted by all these Taxxons. And Arbron brings him up to a plinth of sorts. And he says, Taxxons, friends, Romans, Taxxon men, I, Jake, Demon Jake, bring you the morphs. And he proceeds to go through various morphs, and eventually he comes to the anaconda and says, this is the one that I think you will have. And the Taxxons hiss their approval. And then Arbron comes up to Jake as he's just demorphed and says, you might want to tell your friends to demorph as well. Jake, of course, thinking, oh, okay, I had no way out of this, might as well demorph, guys. So they all demorph, and they're all there. And then suddenly Arbron says, I've got a friend for you to see. And in comes, Thomas. In your convoy. So in comes Tom with a smirk on his face, and Rachel's already getting into grizzly. I think Tom says, don't bother, and Jake's like, no, Rachel, go grizzly. Go grizzly for this. Axe comes up, tail blade to Tom's throat. And what essentially happens here is Tom has a deal. This is where things start to get a bit more convoluted, and trying to think it all through in my head is difficult, and you have to make some logical leaps. It's not completely unreasonable, but you do have to make some base assumptions behind all of this. What has essentially happened is that Tom obviously knows that these Taxxons are peeved because they won't be granted the morphing ability. He's also annoyed because he thinks he should be promoted by Visser 1, YEERK politics, basically fuck Visser 1. And he seems to think as well that Visser 1's an incompetent leader. He's destined to fail. This is not going to go well for him. I'm going to find myself a way out of this. How am I going to do that? I'm going to ally with the Taxxons, use them as a middleman to get the Animorphs involved, and use them as well to get myself out of this. There are a few logical leaps. The biggest one, of course, being the Taxxon aspect of this. Because from this point on, the Taxxons don't really do anything. I'm always confused why they're there, whether it was just to establish a middle ground where Tom and Jake could meet. Because they really don't do much from this point onwards, the Taxxons. Why would Arbron go with this deal? Openly speaking to other YEERKs and basically saying that they're traitors, that they could be betrayed and suddenly blown up. That could be the end of them. But at the same time, he wants the morphing power. Who has the morphing power? Tom. Or he could take control of the morphing cube. And they're part of the deal. What they want, or Tom wants, is for him and a select few YEERKs to take the blade ship and go. Take the morphing cube with him. They won't give it to the Taxxons. So the Taxxons are hoping that the Andalites will give them the morphing cube. And Arbron, being an ex-Andalite himself, should surely know that that will never happen. So what's in it for the Taxxons? Why are they making this deal? Why are they putting themselves at risk for, let's be honest, there's probably no gain for them. And that's where you have to make the logical leap, that Arbron's just been Taxxon for so long, and he's so desperate that he's just going for the most possible thing. This guy risked absolutely everything for the littlest hint of possibility that something good can come out of it. That's all I can see here. What Tom wants to do is to get the Animorphs to provide enough of a distraction for Visser 1 and for the Taxxons to cause problems at this new YEERK pool so that Tom can go to Visser 1 and say, let me take control of the blade ship, I will sort out the Taxxons while you control the pool ship which is under attack from the Animorphs. He's then going to take the blade ship, turn around, blow up Visser 1 and leg it. That's his plan. And of course the Animorphs are thinking, okay, so Tom wants to use us in this plan. He's probably going to betray us. The Animorphs go away from this place and consider this. Jake has a big inner monologue of what really is going on here, because Tom didn't ask for anything. He didn't ask for the Animorphs to prove anything. It's almost like he just wants to trust us. There's something wrong there. There's something absolutely wrong. And he's got all these pieces flying around his head and suddenly, bang, they click together. They click together and he has this plan. And he wants to gather everybody. So he tells Marco, go get the Chee now. That's the first thing he thinks, go get the Chee. And this is where we come to what is essentially the final scene of this book. It's one prolonged infiltration / battle / manipulation scene. And it's actually really good. I'm not usually into the action stuff, but the action side of it is limited. It's more about the inner workings of this plan as it's going through the motions. And I really quite like that. But it starts with this. Jake finally getting one up on the fucking Chee. Yes, thank you, book. Fuck you, Chee. Damn it, this is good. Because he brings Eric in. And he says, right, Eric, you're going to fucking help us out whether you like it or not. And Eric's like, oh, but my programming, fucking... Jake says, right, okay, wheel Chapman in. If you don't do as we say, we kill him. Therefore, your inactions will kill this man. And Eric's like, what? Jake, you've gone so low.
I can go lower.
He's used Eric's own programming against him, which I think is thoroughly justified, because I'm still of the opinion that the Chee are playing a shitty little game behind everyone's back. And maybe Jake sees that as well. Maybe he does, and that's why he's not averse to doing this. Or maybe it's just a simple case of, right, fuck the Chee, we need to win this war, we will use them to our benefit. Which is a large part of this book, and again, the culmination of Jake's cycle. But yes, fuck the Chee, fuck you, Eric, you're getting used here, boy. Then the plan unfolds. They've waited a few days, so General Doubleday has now got all his YEERK-free troops ready and willing to go. The auxiliary Animorphs come in and say, and Jake says to them, right, this is it, this is the final battle, we're doing this now. James says, we've just lost Ray, we need to recover it. No, James, you shut the fuck up, you knew this was going to come, and you will join the fight. Jake is getting into full leader mode now. Stop complaining, you will do the task that you've been tasked to do. Shut up and do it. Oh, Jake, this is the culmination of Jake at this point. He's gone full leader mode. Oh, nice. So the plan begins. Jake is flying around. The big pool ship is there. And 2 Humvees come up. One of them's got Tom in it. Jake ducks under a house to lose any trackers that might be following him and jumps or flies into the back of this Humvee which has Tom in it. So there's Tom in there. There's a Hawk-Bajir controller holding a weapon to Cassie. Now Cassie, as it turns out, is Eric in disguise. So Eric got himself captured by the YEERKs and beaten up by Tom, who's boasting about, oh, how walloped her in the face. Oh, like that. I gave her a backhand and said, you didn't fucking do the dishes right. Fuck you. One of the things that Jake did as well is that he sent Rachel off for a task. And when he eventually said this to her, she was like, are you sure you want to do this? Jake says, it needs to be done. And this again plays into Rachel's culmination. Remember book 22, remember book 48, Rachel knew that she had to die. She knows that she had to die. So when Jake turns around and says, it's time, she's just, okay, it's got to be. It's got to be. So she's gone off and she's actually hiding on Tom, unbeknownst to him. because he thinks he's got the real Cassie here and that the Animorphs are morphed and they are going on Cassie. Now at this point, I would be very suspicious. If I were Tom, I'd be very suspicious. Not only have we got things there, but they come up to the guards who come in with some sort of sensor and they say, right, we've got 2 identifiable complex life forms. There are some bugs as well, but there's nothing registering on this Cassie girl. The sensor's not picking up anything. And Tom's just like, well, she's there, isn't she? Just fucking let us in already. If I were Tom, I'd be thinking, hold on a minute. Something's up here. Because why would they just allow Cassie to get beaten up and taken in? And why isn't she registering? Maybe it's something to do with the Chee, who we know are involved in this war. Nah, fucking stupid suggestion. That's the real Cassie. She's just soul. She's Demon Cassie. She's got no soul. That's why it's not registering. Isn't that right, Demon Cassie?
No soul. No soul.
So Tom goes in. He thinks that all the Animorphs are on Cassie. Why he wouldn't think that they were suspicious at that point as well? What did he think that the Animorphs would be thinking at this point if he assumed that they were going ahead with what he wanted to happen? I know that's a very convoluted sentence, but I'm hoping you get what I mean. If the Animorphs were truly in this situation, they'd be thinking, right, so we're stuck on this injured girl and we'll be taken into the pool ship. For what purpose? How does this benefit us? It doesn't make sense, and Tom at this point should be thinking, right, something's going on here, the sensor's not picking her up. I don't think the Animorphs would walk into this particular situation. But no, he just cracks on. Brings them to the bridge where Visser 1 is, and says, look, there is an Animorph for you, Visser 1. I have beaten her to a pulp, because she didn't do the fucking hoovering! And now she's yours. And the other Animorphs are on her as well, by the way. They bring in a Taxxon, okay? And this Taxxon comes up to Visser 1 and basically does nothing. But Tom says the Taxxons are conspiring Visser 1. The Taxxons at the new YEERK pool are going to fight against us. They're going to join the Andalites. And so Visser 1 says, okay, you know what? There's too much weird stuff here. I'm not going to believe you, Tom. Bad moment. So this is where Tom actually predicted this would happen and said, okay. So if you think I'm playing games here, why don't we just get that Taxxon, the traitor Taxxon there, to eat the Animorphs? Visser 1's like, that sounds like a brilliant idea. Go ahead. And so this Taxxon, which turns out to be Tobias and Morph, eats hologram Eric, who just holograms himself being eaten and then just sort of disperses himself somewhere. The Visser at this point thinks, oh, it must be done. But Tom also tells him, right, they're sending in the military. There's a big military group coming in and the Animorphs will try to infiltrate. Visser 1 says, ha, fools! Fools, shoot them down. The military starts coming in, as well as the auxiliary Animorphs who are with this military bunch. At this point, the pool ship is lifted off the ground about 0.5 kilometre into the air, and the military are just looking up like, well, what the fuck can we do now? Jake, as a fly, is sort of standing nearby. He's watching everything going on the bridge of this pool ship, and he sees the destruction as Visser 1 laughs and gloats as they fire upon, one by one, the auxiliary Animorphs, and they all die. Yeah, that's right, the auxiliary morphs, gone, dead, killed, and then they start to do a wide dispersal beam to take out the military. Now, while all this is going on, the other Animorphs have infiltrated the ship. How did they do that again? They must have been within Eric's hologram or whatever, but they got out of there and they travelled down to engineering, because what they're going to do is take out the ship's navigation, take it completely out of the YEERK's control, and they're going to use Eric to do that. So Eric and the Animorphs have gone down deep into this pool ship and found the engineering sector. and they're going to try to disable everything. So that's all going on. And they only stop it halfway through the military being blasted by this wide dispersal thing. Now, they never went into detail about this, and I'm not sure if they will in book 54, but imagine that, right? They describe it as it will be a few minutes of absolute agony for these military personnel who are basically getting cooked alive. That beam gets stopped halfway through the process. Fucking picture that. These military personnel are probably half cooked, still alive. 700 odd. That is fucking gruesome. And to be honest, I'm not surprised that the book didn't go into detail about that, but it's implied what's happened there, and that is just fucking awful. Awful. Jake is appalled by what's happened. Somebody on the bridge yells up to Visser, there's been an incident in the engineering block, so Visser's attention all goes to this person, and Jake takes that little moment to fly on top of the Visser's head while presumably even his stalk eyes as well are looking at this thing being told to him. So he's now on top of the Visser's head. And it takes a little while, but it dawns on Visser 1 because more information is coming in, and suddenly their firing ability stops and they lose navigation, they lose control of the ship, and it starts to go upwards again. Visser 1 suddenly thinks, oh fuck, we fucked up, lads. Fucked up, lads. Let's go sort this out manually. So he goes off and gathers all these Hork-Bajir from around the pool ship and goes to the engineering sector where all these problems are happening. And they place themselves in front of the door. And there are 12 of Toby's people, including herself, who have joined this group. And they stand in front of the engineering sector. Visser 1 says, right, open the doors and blast everyone inside there. Open the doors, start blasting. And I think it's the Hork-Bajir, the free Hork-Bajir are there as well, and they can't just sit by and do nothing. So they're blasting into this thing, killing all these people inside there, which is pretty freaking traumatic. Jake, however, has spoke to the Animorphs, who are in there, and said, right, you know what's going to happen now. They're going to blast everything. Are you okay? They say, yeah, we've basically got out. And then the Animorphs split off and reconvene in a little secluded area and have a little chat. Jake reveals basically that the auxiliary Animorphs are all dead, but the other Animorphs are more interested in, hold on a minute, where's Rachel? You said you sent her off somewhere and she hasn't appeared. And Jake is being honest. She was on Tom, who has now been given permission to use the Blade ship to go after the rebellious Taxxons. And they're like, shit, you've actually just sent her to her death. Jake's like, yeah, so fucking what? Yeah, I'm Jake, Demon Jake, yeah? Fucking... Tobias and Cassie are pissed. But they know that at this point, there's nothing you can do. You've got to follow out the plan. And so they do. I gotta say though, there's one bit that just seemed really weird and slightly out of place, out of character, jarring, however you want to put it. Jake, we know that Jake has basically abandoned Tom as a brother at this point. Remember back in book 47. And they're in this little meeting aboard the pool ship. And they're talking about what's going on. So, Marco's talking. Eric's down to core programming, no discretion. He cannot enable a major weapon system. Flat cannot. We'll be sitting ducks if Tom turns the Blade ship against us, and we all know that's his plan. I exploded. It's not Tom. It's not Tom. Don't call him that. It's the YEERK in its head. It's the YEERK, not my brother. And I'm thinking, that's just a really jarring and an unnecessary... I don't believe that. That's the one point in this book where I think Catherine got Jake's character wrong, because he just suddenly comes out with this unrestrained anger, and it just makes him look weak and a bit foolish, and yeah, it just doesn't seem to fit, especially from what we know that Jake has basically discarded his brother as a lost cause at this point. So yeah, it just felt a bit out of place to me. Jake says, despite all of what's gone on, right, this is it. This is the last stand now. We got to do this. We got to make this final step. So he goes and warns Toby, saying, don't let anyone out of engineering, even if you will have to fucking die for it. Don't let anyone out of engineering. He knows that Visser 1 is likely to go to the bridge and bypass this group of Free Hork-Bajir. So they plan to go to the bridge to find Visser 1. And they do. But they take a little bit of a detour. They find the YEERK pool aboard the pool ship. And they fight off the guards. And suddenly, there's a little booth with the controls for the YEERK pool itself. And Axe says, look, Prince Jake, there's the pool controls. We can drain the pool. And Jake just sort of goes along with it. He just says, all right, get inside that booth. And they get in there. There's a bit of a scrap, but they're in this booth now. And Axe programs and says, right, Jake, I've programmed it. As soon as I press this button, we've flushed the YEERK pool. And Jake looks at it and says, do I really want to do this? Yeah, flush them. Axe flushes and 17,000 YEERKs are flushed out into space. 17,000. And there's an interesting bit here where Jake is thinking about the decision just before he makes it. And it's almost like he's justifying it to himself. He says, they chose to come here. They chose to come to Earth and take part in this invasion. They may be defensive now, but, and I quote, they are aliens, parasites, subhuman. Subhuman. That's a very, very... That's a big word, and it's got a lot of historical relevance to it. As soon as you can paint something or someone as subhuman, you feel like that you're justified in doing atrocious acts towards them. Look at the Nazis, what they did with the Jews during World War II. They basically painted them as subhuman, which allowed them to commit the atrocities that they did. And I think it's a very deliberately chosen word here. Jake, in that moment, says to himself, subhuman, therefore I can do this action, and he does that action. But he wasn't the one that suggested it, nor was he the one that carried it out. He only gave permission. It was Axe who suggested it, who took the action to put the process in place, and then hit the button. Axe was very much part to blame, but Jake, as the leader, as the man that gave final permission, is largely responsible. It's joint between those two. The big moral problem about this particular bit is that these YEERKs are, for all intents and purposes, defenseless. Defenseless. They are military. They are part of this war, and this is where it's a big grey area, because yeah, they are military, but they're also completely defenseless, and there's 17,000 of them, and they've already got navigation of the ship, or they've disabled it, and they have Visser 1 in a corner. So were these YEERKs were they potential danger at this point? Probably not. If they weren't in a winning position, the Animorphs, and these YEERKs in this pool could easily, within a few hours, be a major problem for the Animorphs, or even a few days or whatever, if they were still a threat to the plan. This is where it's a real grey area, and this is where I can't come up with a yes, that's correct, or that's correct. It's down to you, this one. It's a big, big call, and I err on the side of it was wrong, largely because they had Visser 1 essentially cornered. The war was almost done. They had the upper hand at this point. And though Tom may have escaped in the blade ship, he's on the blade ship. These YEERKs in this pool are not on that blade ship. And Tom, his plan's to blow up the blade ship. So he's not going to take these 17,000 YEERKs. For as far as I can see, their war is over. They may have signed up to the war, but the war for them is effectively over. So to flush them out into space at that point, it's difficult. but I err on the side of that was wrong. But of course, Jake is in that 41 mindset. Hit that abort button. Hit that abort button. Do not take risks. Just do what you can when you can to ensure success. That's the mindset he's in. That's the culmination of all of this. They reach the bridge of the pool ship and Visser 1 is already there, but he's watching as things are unfolding. He sees that the blade ship has turned and is coming back. He knows that he's been betrayed. He sees the YEERKs that have been flushed out. And he doesn't act, he knows that it's over for him. Visser 1 knows that it's over. And so he's almost resigned himself to it now. He says, right, yep. We're screwed, guys. We're screwed. Probably because of my incompetent leadership, but I'm just going to blame you all fuckers anyway. Typical Visser 1 sort of thinking. But he has a last, almost gloating moment towards the Animorphs. They say, right, we've defeated you, Visser 1. He says, no, it wasn't you that defeated me. I was defeated by another YEERK, a traitor, Tom. He's the one that screwed this up for me. So he sees it as the only people that were able to stop him were his own. That's part of his paranoia, surely coming into play. And we've seen his paranoia before. He doesn't like other YEERKs having power. And this is all very much in character for Visser 1. The Animorphs say, right, you got a chance to disable that blade ship. You've got 2 more rounds in the barrel, for want of a better way of putting it. He says, yeah, but our power is being drained. And Jake suddenly thinks, oh, for fuck's sake, Eric, you bastard. You find one more way to bloody double cross us. He's lowering the power in the weaponry. Bastard, Eric, you do find one more way just to annoy everybody, don't you? They fire off these rounds and they miss. And then Tom opens contact with the pool ship and speaks to them all, says, this is it, guys. We've won now. You're going to die. Get ready, guys, to fire up your Dracon beams. And they're about to blow it up. But because the comms are there, Jake can thought speak. And Rachel is still with Tom. And he says, Rachel, go. And that's where the book ends. Oh, what a juicy, juicy little book. Very, very good. And it's very much an action book, but there's also the culmination of Jake's character. And I've gone through it as we've gone through the plot, so there's not going to be much to add. But essentially, this is when he's hitting that big abort button. Hence the swooshing out of the YEERKs into space. He's led the auxiliary Animorphs to their deaths, and he's led 700 odd military personnel to a life of crippling disability, at the very least. 700 men and women. He's put Toby and the Hawkbajir in as a blockade, just holding off YEERK forces coming through engineering, getting attacked that way, so he's put them in severe danger. He's not betrayed Eric, because Eric's the great betrayer anyway. He's used Eric, he's used his program against him. He's hit all of the abort buttons to get this win. And all of Jake's character has come to this moment. And you could say he's gone overboard. Is he guilty of war crimes? That's a debate for another day. That's for an Annie Theory video somewhere in the near future. But I think this was a very good book for Jake. And I don't think his character's quite rounded off yet. Same goes for most of the characters, because we've still got book 54 where we see where they come afterwards. But we need to see how Jake reacts to this. And we still got a bit of the fight to go, which is the start of the beginning, the next book. So I think a lot of my thoughts on this book will go into the Jake analysis video, but this is a huge book for him. He's finally hitting those abort buttons that he saw back in book 41. He's been told by Cassie that it's basically over for them. He's got no family, and he said, right, Tom is going to die. He's cut off all those ties. But in doing so, in sacrificing everything he held dear, and potentially his own life, not physical life, but everything he holds close and everything he holds pride in for himself, everything about himself, he's sacrificing to finish this war. And, well, we'll see in the next book how it all finishes off. Jake's leadership. Oh, once again, the bit near the start where he didn't reveal himself properly to General Doubleday annoyed me a bit, but I let that slide because it allowed us to have a bit of humour in what is otherwise a very, very bleak book, so I'm going to let that slide. He uses all of his tools to his advantage in a brilliant way, even if it meant sacrificing his own pride, essentially. He played the game almost to perfection. There were a few flaws along the way, a few little holes, but that's military leadership. Nothing, you can't expect things to go perfectly. There's always going to be holes. There's always going to be holes. And is there anything Jake didn't do right here? I'm going to knock a point off because I think some of his decisions were definitely overboard, and being the leader, he's got to take responsibility for that. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. Very, very good. The book itself, I was considering 8. I think it's a 9. I think it's a 9. There are issues that I've talked about. Tom not being suspicious when he pretty much perhaps should have been. The Taxxon thing being not actually that important come the end of the book. Because all Tom has to do on the bridge is say, the Taxxons are rebelling. And, yeah, that's all they needed. We didn't need this whole Taxxon actual rebellion. We didn't really need Arbron. As far as I'm concerned, I might look back into it later on a bit deeper and think, oh, actually it meant this. But from where I'm standing now, having just read the book, it felt a bit needless. Didn't really need that bit. It was more just a way to get Tom and Jake interacting. It was a middle ground for that. But yeah, it's not a 10 out of 10, but it's a strong 9. It's a strong 9. A very, very good book. And next week we cover the very last book of the Animorphs series, the beginning, where it all comes to an end for the main series. I've got a sore throat, I'm hungover, I'm going to go listen to the football. Tune in next week for the last of this review series, but don't think that this channel is going to stop there. We've got so much more coming for you after that. So thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time. Ta-ra.